Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the No Nay Never podcast. The opening weekend of the Premier League season is done, and the Clarets falling to a 3-0 defeat away at Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A tough afternoon for the Clarets and a real welcome back to the Premier League. I am joined this week by regular panellist Tom Whittaker. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Natalie. How are you? I can't get my words out. How are you doing? All right. That's
we're all good, thank you. It is. And we're also joined by regular panellist and Clarets Trust Chairman George Poole. George, good evening.
Good evening all. Looking forward to chatting about Premier League football again.
Premier League football and, which we'll come on to very, very quickly, the bizarre rules that the Premier League likes to throw on us just because they don't think that the game is convoluted enough as it is. Well, we're going to start off this week's podcast by a little bit of an intro from Dave. We had a little bit of a technical issue with part 2 of our preview show this week, and it got stuck, and that technical issue being stuck in hotel Wi-Fi and didn't quite upload. But Dave prepared a few stats for us ahead of this fixture, and I think one of the ones I wanted to play at first for you was it was probably always going to be likely that the Clarets were going to struggle away at Spurs. Let me hand over to Dave Statman Roberts and he'll fill you in on why exactly that was going to be. Well, then let's kick us off then, Dave, because we're building up to this week's weekend game. It's a very rare Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff, which is quite bizarre. We are away at Spurs in the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff, Saturday the 18th of August. It's not televised anywhere in the UK.
16th of August, get it right.
What did I say?
18th.
4 minutes and 30 seconds into...
I was thinking it might have been my slide that was wrong there, but no, it's definitely right.
4 minutes and 30 seconds into the first preview show of the season, and I've got a stat wrong. This, my listeners, my friends, is why I bring in a professional statistician, and I am not doing this work because I'm useless. My God, chaos again already. Welcome to a new season. It's Saturday the 16th of August, 3 p.m. kickoff, not televised anywhere in the UK. Dave, what are our opening stats? Let's kick us off, please.
Remarkably, the Clarets are about to embark on a 10th season in the Premier League. We've really come a long way since the dark days of the late 1980s and early 1990s. After getting promoted by the playoffs for a brief visit in 2009-10, we had a second brief taste of the top flight again in 2014-15 before managing a very impressive 6-season run between 2016 and 2022. Followed by a rather miserable return in 2023-24. Not say too much about that season. This time, we start our campaign away from Turf Moor, and for those of us who've travelled to experience Premier League away days, we already know how tough it can be. Overall, we've managed just 34 away wins in 171 attempts away from Turf Moor in the Premier League, which is a smidge under 1 win out of 5. In our first Premier League campaign, we had a long wait until April to register our one and only away win of that season at Hull City. And a vital victory at Crystal Palace was our only away win in 2016-17. Our best return so far on the road is 7, which we managed in 2017-18, as well as in 2019-20. Both times this helped us to top 10 finishes.
So, Tom, you were at the game at the weekend. You travelled down to London, one of the heroes that braved the south, got your jabs and went down south to do there. I want to kick us off with this week's podcast with just a general overview of how you felt about the game and how you felt watching it and being there and how Scott Parker's side approached that fixture.
I certainly shall, yeah. It was. I think everyone was feeling pretty optimistic on the way down. It's a nice day. It's a nice day out at Spurs. The new ground's very good. Place to drink nearby. I need to give a shout at this point to Connor and Lewis, 2 Chef Wednesday fans that I met on the train coming down. They were very personable, and we got 2 new subscribers from them. So shout out to them. Hello, lads. A few beers in around the ground in the away end in the concourse before. It was the atmosphere was fantastic. It was really rocky and everyone seemed really excited. And I was thinking, am I wrong to be sort of trepidatious about being back in the Premier League here? I was thinking, it feels like everyone's very optimistic. It feels like it's going to be a good day out. And then 10 minutes later, we've been pummeled for 10 minutes and we're 1-0 down. And you think, oh God, I remember what this is like now. But I think after that goal went in, from between the first and second goals, we were probably the better team. It was a funny game, really, because Spurs really did have us under the cosh for them first 10 minutes, and you were thinking this is going to be a long afternoon, but we responded really well. We looked a threat on the break. I think Spurs were kind of leaving gaps and just assuming that Mickey van der Ven was going to be quick enough to come back and tidy up any holes that were in the back line. And unfortunately for us, they were pretty much right. He was the best player on the pitch, and maybe him and Kudus, just everywhere. And as much as kind of we've been hoping Foster's going to look a different player when he's got a bit of space to run into, that kind of thing, it was like men against boys when you saw Foster up against Van der Ven, unfortunately. But we kept plugging away, won a few free kicks in dangerous areas, didn't really test the keeper as much as we'd have liked, unfortunately, and probably the best chance that we had fell to Hannibal in the second half. Anthony did fantastic. Just Nathan Teller's touch of a long ball over his shoulder, killed it, laid it off, and Hannibal's got a great chance to shoot, and he just decides to come inside, and it's just one touch too many. Ball swept away, and then a couple of minutes later, Spurs go up the other end. It's 2-0, and it's the two great goals. There's obviously problems with the defending, and I've seen a few question marks on Dubravka as well, which I think are a little bit harsh, but I think that second one particularly, sometimes you just got to hold your hands up and say that's just a great goal, and there's not always a lot you can do about that. And I think after that second one went in, the belief went, and it felt like damage limitation at that point, particularly when they scored a third so soon after. Probably at that point you're quite happy to get away with the 3-0. But I would say, if you look at the scoreline and kind of certain moments in the game, you're thinking we've got a bit of a chase in there. It's a bit of a welcome back to the Premier League moment. But I think, considering the team we had out, there's 4 or 5 players there that you probably wouldn't have in our ideal starting 11. Hopefully there's still 1 or 2 to come in. I'd say there's cause for optimism amongst that, and it will be very interesting to see how we set up and what we do next week against a team who's perhaps more in our league at our level, if that makes sense.
Perhaps more in our league. I would hope they're in our league. Otherwise, we're in a whole world of pain this season if we're not in the same league as Sunderland. That's going to be a long old season. George, a few things there to pick up on, but I think let's start with that attacking threat. Now, we know that Broja, depending on how we're pronouncing it, isn't quite ready yet, although we're told he's not too far off. And he's the big money signing of the season in terms of our striker. It's probably not the most cutting edge of podcast conclusions to say that a Burnley side doesn't quite have a world-class striker compared to Spurs side. For you, is it enough to just say that it's the clinical strike force and the cutting edge in front of goal that's missing between these sides, or did it feel like the gap was more?
I think the gap's definitely more than that. I mean, it would help to have a great striker as well, but I mean, if you look across the pitch, they're 3 or 4 levels above us in every part of the pitch. I mean, kudos to him because he had a fantastic game. He was fantastic. He was just getting along that byline, putting balls in. And Richarlison's a guy who has the quality there to do exactly what he did. I don't think we can find solace. And I know people, and I understand why people are saying this. They're saying, "Oh well, Tottenham were clinical and we weren't, so therefore it's okay. It's just, we just need to be more clinical." There's a reason our players aren't clinical. It's because they aren't good enough to be clinical. And there's a reason Tottenham did score those goals. It's because they have the quality to do that. It's not a one-off, it's not an anomaly. This pattern between us and maybe that sort of side will continue all season. We won't be clinical. We won't score those goals because we don't have the quality to do so. So I think that was my biggest sort of concern coming out of the weekend, is that it just, even though I agree with Tom, we held our own for a lot of the game, and I thought we gave a good account of ourselves. I think it really exaggerated or exposed, the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses to our side, and it really just highlighted the gulfing quality. Tottenham are a team that, obviously, for all the reasons behind it, they finished 17th last season, and we were miles apart realistically by full time on Saturday. So yeah, a few concerns probably coming out of this game, as well as a few positives.
Okay, what are those concerns, George? Let's debate them. When you say there's some concerns, what what are you talking about? What do
Well,
what are our controllables and what can we not control?
Probably the ones we can control are the fact that we don't have a good enough squad yet. I still think we're a good 30-40 million pounds worth spent shy of, having a real good chance. I mean, you look at what Sunderland have spent this summer, and it's in enough ballpark to us. And not just what they've spent; it's who they've spent it on. They've signed some really high caliber players, if we can say that, from the likes of a Leverkusen, your Milan teams, and people like this. Roma. And you just look at what they're spending on. You saw their side on Saturday, Sunderland's side, the way they dismantled West Ham. Okay, West Ham are nothing to write home about, and there's Graham Potter tax, I like to call it, because he's a rubbish manager. But you look at the quality they had out there, and it just made me think, I don't see that in us. And maybe before we branch off to other areas, the second concern, I'd say, is the formation that we played. I can understand why we're going to a 5 at the back, but for me, there's just huge gaping areas in midfield now as a result of this. And it feels like we just sit back and invite pressure. And not to mention, if you've got one goalkeeper, 5 defenders, and, 2 sitting midfielders in Cullen and Laurent, it was on Saturday, you've got 3 people on the pitch who are trying to score. You've got Foster, Anthony, Hannibal. You've got 3 attacking players out of 11. And for me, we just invite a bit too much pressure by playing that 5 at the back. And I can understand why we're doing it, but for me, it's not right. And certainly against Sunderland, we should be playing the exact same formation we played last season. But I don't know. Maybe you guys think differently.
No, I think that's something we've talked about in previous podcasts, isn't it, Tom? I mean, what did that look like on the ground? Because I think as soon as Walker came in, we all thought that we might go 5 at the back, particularly away from home. But that was to try and be really defensive and not ship 3 goals away from home. And that didn't happen. All that happened is that we got absolutely run over in midfield, and there was just so much space for Spurs midfield to just create whatever the heck they wanted. Did it feel like that big of a gulf between defence and midfield, or would a 4-4-2 formation have worked better on Saturday?
It looks a bit undercooked. It's the first time we've played that in a proper game, and it looks a bit undercooked. The annoyance for me was those first 2 goals. You've got the cross coming in, and then, as George said, and we spoke about it on Match of the Day as well, the gap between the 2 midfielders and the 3 defenders, it was almost like no one knows if the Richarlison peels off like he did for those 2 goals, does someone go out to him? Does a midfielder come back and intercept that ball? And you think when you've got 3 centre halves in there, someone should be picking it up or stopping the cross, and that obviously didn't work. So that's what it felt to me. I wouldn't say necessarily it's going to be a problem having 3 players on the pitch who are looking to score a goal when we go into these kind of places. Realistically, we're going there to try and frustrate and get a 0-0 and hold on as long as possible. And obviously, what really knackered us was that we were 1-0 down after 10 minutes, and then you are going to need to score at some point. But when we say that, we've said there, I think at half time we'd had more shots than Spurs.
Yeah, we had.
After the first goal, we were the better team. So it's not as if we weren't creating anything, getting forward at all. George, I know you say there's 3 players on the pitch looking to get a goal, but then you think the wing backs, especially Hartman, he's more of an attacking player than a defensive player, I'd say. And I think that's the idea with him. And Sonner, he couldn't get a game last year. I'd like to think that Sonner is not going to be the first choice for the majority of the games this season as well. So there's the potential to upgrade there with Roberts, and we know Roberts has got goals in him going forward. So yeah, I'd say I'd be disappointed if we're playing 5 at the back at home to Sunderland, because I think it does limit you in an attacking sense. Inevitably it will do. But I wouldn't say that because we've lost 3-0 away at Spurs, it's time to write that off. We've been there with Dyche before at the back with a more defensive manager, arguably, and got beat 5, haven't we? So it can happen. And as George said, I think really I didn't come away from that game thinking, oh, so-and-so's had a shocking game there, or Parker's completely disastrous tactically. I just thought, they've clearly got better players than us. And in these big moments, these big players have done really good things. Kudus has had the full back on toast and whipped a great ball in. Richarlison's pulled out a brilliant finish. And that's what it came down to for me, really. I wouldn't want to abandon that 5 at the back. Say Man United in a couple of weeks' time, I'd say it would make sense to play that there.
One of my issues with it is that, and I agree with what you're saying there, Tom. I think away at a big club like this, maybe a 5 at the back's the right decision. But I do worry if we went 5 at the back for the majority of the season, the fact that Kyle Walker's meant to be, on paper, ostensibly our best player. And at the right-hand side of a back three, how much impact can he actually have on a game in terms of actually imposing his quality on the opposition? Kyle Walker's not he was never a world-class centre-back. He was a world-class right-back. And for me, when he's sort of stuck at centre-back, he can make the odd, fantastic Hollywood pass. The one to Anthony was the one that set up the chance that Hannibal should have scored. But for me, if you're limiting Walker to that sort of position all season, I know we probably won't play every game, but I think we really limit what we can squeeze out of him. Whereas if we're at a 4-back and you have Kyle Walker at right back and he's getting forward a lot more and he's touching the ball and he's in different areas of the pitch, he can put crosses in, etc. I feel like you're squeezing more and getting more out of your best player like that. Whereas I think if we do go at 5 at the back for the majority of the season and Walker is that right hand side, I'm not entirely sure what he gives us that just another run of the mill centre back wouldn't.
That's a really good point, actually.
That'd be a shame, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. How did we feel Ekdal? Well, actually, not necessarily Ekdal. How did you feel that Steve performed as Steve, Tom? Because a lot of the reports, I mean, I wasn't at the ground, so I've been limited to the highlights and extended highlights that we've seen, and he looked all right to me. But I've seen quite a lot of major broadcasters giving him like 3 and 4 out of 10 in terms of performance, which, considering that we're kind of all hanging our hats on Esteve as being one of our star performers this season, is a little bit worrying.
Yeah, I don't think he was a 3, but he certainly didn't play well. I mean, like, a lot of the team, he looked like he wasn't quite comfortable playing in this formation, and he also isn't as good as some of Tottenham's players, and that's all it came down to for me. It was frustrating, he's give that ball away for the first goal. He's tried to play that little clip ball down the line when I guess it was on, he's just played it badly. But for me, if you're going 5 at the back and you're going away to Spurs, in the first sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, they should just all be going in the stand. And that just really set the tone, to be 1-0 down after that. Listen, he'll come good. He's only a young lad. He's not played that much Premier League football yet. He's got the potential, we know that, and I'm sure it will help him playing alongside Walker, and I'm sure he'll get better, and I'm sure the whole team will get better. And you mentioned Ekdal before. I said there's probably 3-4 in that starting lineup that don't scream out automatic pick for the rest of the season, and Ekdal might be, and he might not be, but he's not someone where I think if we looked at the squad at the start of the season, we thought, yes, if we're playing 3 centre-halves, Yama or Ekdal has got to be one of them, because again, we just don't know. I don't think he played at this level at all, did he? He didn't play much, certainly in the company season, and he's obviously not really kicked a ball for us for a year before today. So that's another one where that's the one I should say that I'd have more question marks over than Esteve. I think Walker and Esteve are going to be pretty settled in that back 4/5.
Okay. One of the early talking points of the season, which came in quite easily, was a certain decision that went against our goalkeeper. Before we go on to that very bizarre decision, Dave did warn us before this game that we might be in for some prickly refereeing decisions, considering who was our man in the middle. Let Dave just tell you who refereed this game and what our record was with this referee before we move on to this point.
Well, you're not going to like this. As if the odds weren't against us enough, we've already said what our record is like against Spurs away from home. The first refereeing appointment of the new Premier League season sees Ashington-based official Michael Oliver on the middle for our visit to North London. Oh, yes. He's taken charge of a total of 27 previous Burnley matches since 2008. But from his 19 previous games in the Premier League, the Clarets have only managed 3 victories. with 4 draws and 12 defeats. 2 of those Premier League wins, though, were away from Turf Moor, a little bit of a positive, although both of those were behind closed doors games during the pandemic. They were a 1-0 win at West Ham United in July 2020 and a 3-0 win, a memorable one at Crystal Palace in February 2021. A wonder goal from a certain Matt Lowton, if I remember correctly. Those 19 previous Burnley games in the Premier League have seen Oliver brandish a red card on 4 occasions. Twice to Burnley players, they were Jeff Hendrick and Dara O'Shea, and twice to our opponents, Harry Maguire while he was still with Leicester City, and Arsenal's Fabio Vieira.
Excellent stuff. So yeah, George, the point being, of course, that just 8 minutes into the game, no, it wasn't 8 minutes into the game, about 11 minutes into the game, Dubravka was the first goalkeeper to be penalised, the Premier League's new rule that any goalkeeper that holds onto the ball for more than 8 seconds will concede a corner to the opposition. I mean, at this point, I don't fully understand what nonsense the FA are going to come out with, the Premier League are going to come out with next, just because it just seems like they're just trying to find more and more ways to make the game overly convoluted. But it probably comes as absolutely no surprise to absolutely anybody that the Burnley keeper was the first keeper to fall foul of that. I mean, what is this nonsense, George? Talk me through it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think for me, I'm not completely against it, and I think if there's a rule there, and you're going to enforce it, then enforce it. You know, and I'm happy for us to take that on the chin. I'm just not entirely sure I agree with the rule in the first place, because for me, the whole nature of football is you're going to have better teams and you're going to have worse teams, and it's all about, if you want a competitive game, it's all about the worst teams finding ways, you know, to operate against the bigger teams and make life difficult. And okay, there's some things that aren't allowed with that. So, you know, you're not allowed to go 2-footed into a player anymore. You're not allowed to, you know, injure a player purposely. Okay, that's fine. But for me, the sort of craftsmanship around, you know, taking your time with a set piece, taking your time from a goal kick, that for me is stemming. That stops the sort of flow and the momentum that a big team can get. I mean, we saw when it went 2 and 3-0 at the weekend, that Tottenham ground was huge and it was loud, and they were on top of us. And it really seemed like an impossible task. To be honest, as soon as that second went in, as Tom said, both teams gave up. Realistically, you know, we didn't give up, but there was an understanding between both teams that A, Burnley can't score 2 goals away at Tottenham, and you know, B, Tottenham weren't going to give us the chance to do that. There was sort of an understanding there. So for me, in these sort of topsy-turvy contests, you know, where you got a bigger team and a smaller team, you need all these, you know, strings to your arrows. Or is it bows to your arrows? I don't know. I'm getting my metaphor.
What on earth are you talking about, George?
Well, I think what I'm trying
balls and arrows. Go on.
What I'm trying to say is that I probably don't agree with the rule in the first place. But I don't know, Tom, for you, how do you feel about this? Because for me, it really does limit, you know, our ability to sort of stop the momentum of a big team.
The really frustrating thing for me was because those tricks are there, aren't they? And I think, especially if you're a neutral, it does make the game less of a spectacle. So when I heard they'll bring this rule in, I thought, okay, that's good. That they're obviously recognised there's a fault and they're trying to do something about it. So I thought, okay, I'm looking forward to seeing this in action. And then you watch the game and you think, right, so now goalies aren't allowed to hold it in their hands for more than 8 seconds. Great. But about a minute before that, Tottenham had a throw in. Probably took about 40 seconds to throw it back in. Is there going to be a rule about how long you can take to take a throw in? No, there isn't, is there, realistically? So that's one of about 8,000 ways you can still waste time and the referee's not going to do anything. And then the most frustrating one was in the second half. The ball's run through to, what's that keeper called, Vicario. He stood there with the ball in his hands for 8 seconds. I'm thinking, great corner for us here. We could do with this. Oh no, Jed Spence his boots come off and he's he's like a shop assistant at Clark's who's spending 8 minutes measuring his feet, just checking. You might need to loosen the laces a bit before I get the old boot back on. Does Michael Oliver say, well, that's a fairly transparent time-wasting ploy there, Jed. I'm afraid I'm going to have to give Burnley a corner. No, he walks over to Vicario. He takes the ball off him, just so just to make sure. I wouldn't want anyone to think that you've been holding this ball for more than 8 seconds, Vicario. I'll just stand here with the ball just while Jed sorts his boot out. Brilliant. And you think, well, what is the point then? What is the point? It's only enforceable when Martin Dubravka does it. But,
yeah, exactly.
But the one positive that I will say is now the eternal quiz question up and down the line will be, who were the first ever Premier League team to concede a corner without putting the ball out of play? And we have been immortalised in said quiz question. So, as bad as he was, as he always is for us, Michael Oliver, thank you for immortalising us in that small way.
We are clutching, I think, somehow here. I think it's a really interesting point that you were saying there, and I think the petulant Burnley fan in me is my initial reaction was, well, you can guarantee that Burnley will be the only keeper that gets penalised for this season, because I can't imagine that they'll punish the City keeper, whoever that may be, or like obviously if Trafford had done it on Sunday and he'd hold on to it for eight and a half seconds, would they have given City would they conceded a corner for the City keeper? No, of course they won't. So there's that kind of petulance in where I'm like, well, obviously they were going to do it to Burnley and they're not going to do it to anybody else, but we'll wait and see. But I did see, and this goes along to your point there, Tom, about gamesmanship and trying to manipulate the rules. There's a really interesting piece. I think it's in The Guardian today. This is Monday, the 18th that we're recording, if anybody wants to go back and fact check this, in that Arteta had clearly got this on his radar. And he set his team up really quickly for their attacking players to try and block the keeper from being able to make the goal kick or place the ball, forcing them to hold on to the ball for more than 8 seconds and therefore getting the corner. Now, in that game, the referee cottoned on to that relatively quickly and basically just shooed the Arsenal players away and basically just he looked at his clock and went, I'm not starting the clock until you move. Basically. So I think referees were probably live to that and realised it wasn't going to get done. But it's just one of the things we've talked about for such a long time is the broadcasters like to call it gamesmanship. I like to call it cheating, just because I think that's what it is. It's just the ways that people get around the rules, and they just go unpunished all the time. It just feels so unbelievably Burnley-like that we would concede that corner for the first game of the season because we held onto the ball too long. It's just very, very frustrating. Last point on the game itself before we talk about a couple of wider points, George. Penalty for you on Jadon Anthony?
Yeah, definitely not a penalty for me. I think the ball had gone way past him. He's nothing to do with the game. I know he was gonna maybe run around and try and keep the ball in and stuff, but I wouldn't be going out on a limb to demand this was a penalty for Burnley. And if the referee doesn't give it on the pitch, I don't want to see VAR overturning a decision like that, because for me, he pushed him over, but he was nowhere near the ball. It was an unfortunate. It was unfortunate because Walker, the ball was just probably a little bit too far in front of Anthony when we were in a really great position. But I thought both Walker and Anthony had good games on Saturday, so chapeau to them. But it wasn't a penalty for me.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm inclined that way. I think just as you say, from the away end, it looked like the ball's already gone anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I do think though, what a stupid thing to do. He's a bit of a loose cannon into that Porro, but he does foul him, and it's like, by the letter of the law, you could certainly make a case for that. And I think with Michael Oliver, I've always thought he's the ultimate, I'll ref the big six in a different way kind of ref. He's never going to give that, but a different ref on a different day sees that challenge because it is a foul. I'm with George really. I don't really want to see penalties being given for that, but it's a stupid thing to do. On another day, maybe we'd have got lucky.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, good stuff. Man of the match. Who was the best performer for you, George? Let's do this season. This might be a nice thing to do. Who was your man of the match?
I think for us, I thought Josh Cullen was probably our best player on the pitch. I thought he was impressive, and I thought Laurent, fair play to him. I thought he was all right. And I thought he gave a good account of himself. But yeah, when Leslie came on, I thought you could see straight away he felt more at home at this level. He had the physicality. He had the little quick movements, the way he was trying to gallivant up the pitch a little bit. You could just tell there was a real player there. So yeah, Cullen man of the match, and I'm hoping that, you know, from this weekend on, we can see him and Leslie start to form their partnership in midfield.
Yeah, Ugochukwu. It's very easy to do. Tom, who was your man of the match?
Yeah, I think George mentioned him earlier, but the one that stood out for me, I think, just because I was surprised how comfortable he made the step, was Anthony. I thought he looked, and you know, when we brought Edwards in, you were thinking, oh, this guy's like a real upgrade. But I think for the last 2-3 months, I think Anthony's played a lot better than Edwards. I think he's deserving them starts, and I could see why he'd started him, and I thought he justified it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in the Prem.
Excellent. And then final word, Parker's performance. Did he get his tactics right? He talked quite openly in his post-match interview about the fine margins. It was like listening to Dash all over again. Fine margins of the Premier League, and the things that he was overall very proud of his players and thought that they made a good account of themselves. His first game in the Premier League for a while. Tom, let's go to you first to swap it around. What did you make of his performance? Give me a rating for Parker.
Well, it put me in mind of, your question put me in mind of, remember Pierre Van Hooijdonk, who used to play for Forest? When Forest won the championship with Dave Bassett as manager, Van Hooijdonk had a big fallout with him. And he said, you know, if there was 24, if all the 24 teams in the league were managed by cats, one cat would win the league and 3 cats would get relegated. Does that mean the 1 cat's a genius and the 3 cats who got relegated are idiots? And basically what I'm trying to say in a convoluted way is, if Parker had got everything spot on, everything was perfect, all the tactics were fine-tuned to the most minute detail, Richarlison's still going to score an over a kick and we're still going to get beat. So I'm not judging him on that one. I'll be more interested to see what he does against Sunderland.
Excellent. George, I'm not entirely sure you can top a 20 cat, 3 cat, 1 cat genius analogy, but please go ahead and please tell me how you felt Parker's performance was.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, to be fair, from Tom. I think, yeah, with all the best wishes in the world, I don't think we're really going to land a glove on Tottenham at the weekend, are you? I think we're in a state now in the Premier League where, you know, if you're going up against the big 8 or the big 7, whatever you want to call them, unless they have an off day, you've not really got a Scooby-Doo, have you? I thought Parker's new haircut looked fantastic.
Don't think Scooby-Doo's that's the right thing. That's you've not got a clue.
Hey, not Scooby.
George, can you stop trying to talk in phrases today? Because that's the 3rd one now that you've got wrong.
Cockney rhyming slang. Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, not got a clue. It's Cockney rhyming slang. Come on, Natalie.
Yeah, but that's not what we were saying.
And I think for me, Parker's post-match comments are always actually pretty interesting, because the way he reads the game is pretty bob on. He was pretty honest to say, you know, we were rubbish really until they scored their first goal. We were a bit hesitant, so we didn't get stuck in, and we gave them too much freedom. And then after that, until the second goal, we were the better team. So yeah, I always find his pre-match interviews incredibly mind-numbing and boring. But then when he speaks after a game, he gives quite good analysis and fair comments.
Just to say as well, just before we move on, you were spot on about the hair, and it was very nice to see him dressed up to the nines, wearing a suit instead of that stupid jacket for a change. I didn't know if he'd been in court in the morning or what, but it was a very smart look. Well done, Scott.
Well, there you go. Scott, if you're listening to this, you get the none and never seal of approval for your attire. So there you go. All is not lost from this weekend, people. But I'm sorry to say, actually, you're not one of the bottom 3 cats. Actually, we're not in the relegation zone right now on alphabetical order, which is amazing, with 3 other teams who rank below B's also succumbing to 3-0 defeat. So there you go. You're only the 4th worst cat in the league, but you did dress. You're the 4th worst cat, but the best dressed, Scott. I mean, what more can we possibly give you? Okay, we're going to have a very quick break here. I'm going to hand back to Statman Dave for a little bit of a preview of this season's preview show. Because this season, Dave Statman Roberts has been going into the archives of the football news reports from newspapers right the way back to the end of the Second World War. And part of our preview show this season, he's going to be displaying some real corkers of some newspaper cuttings. So I'm going to play a clip from our preview of this week's show where he gave us a real memorable match of Spurs, which I thought might cheer you all up a little bit, given that we got beat at the weekend. A good result away at Spurs and some really fascinating newspaper clips. So this is our mid-break little segment to give you a nice little preview of the preview show. We're now moving into instead of having some memorable matches here, we're starting to look at some headline highlights. And this is where we bring in the first of our scripts, I think. There we are. Tottenham Hotspur 1, Burnley 1. What have you picked for us to have a look at in terms of a memorable match?
The memorable match this time, we didn't have a lot of choice. When you look back at Spurs in our Premier League campaigns, we played them in all 9 of the previous Premier League campaigns we've had at 3 different grounds as well. We played them at White Hart Lane, Wembley, and also the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where we'll be on Saturday. And we've yet to come away with all 3 points. We have managed to score just 4 goals in those 9 matches and have conceded 23. And as we mentioned already, there's been 8 defeats and just 1 draw to choose from. So this week's match virtually picks itself. We are going back to fairly early on in the 2017-18 season, a fairly memorable season for us. We've got some newspapers articles for those who are watching on the YouTube. We've got some images of those. That's the front page of the Burnley Express. Wood earns his Spurs, which was just a photo on the front referring to obviously Chris Wood. It wasn't his debut. He came on. He played in the midweek match. We played Blackburn Rovers in the League Cup in midweek. So it wasn't actually his debut, but it was his first Premier League match for Burnley. He came on as a sub and he got the equaliser. We drew 1-1. And then if we move on to the full report from the Burnley Express, the headline for that was "Lucky number 11 for the Clarets," again referring to that man again, Chris Wood, relatively new signing who'd come to us from Leeds United and had a really, really good goal scoring record for us. I don't think he necessarily gets all the credit he deserves for the time he had at Burnley and the goals that he scored, but certainly that season he got into double figures, I think, and he was a big part of our season, not just that season, but right through until he left us to join Newcastle United mid-season. We also had from the Lancashire Telegraph, their headline was "Wemberg Lee," little bit of a pun there, for wonderful Wood, a bit of alliteration. You can't go wrong with a bit of alliteration in newspaper headlines. And some great,
I miss that in modern journalism, David, with all of the...
But you still get it. You still get it.
Every now and again, but it's not as... It's all about algorithms now and clickbait. I think I do miss it a little bit. Is that Dele Alli down there in the bottom corner with Jack Cork?
Could well be, yeah.
Oh, the days. Anyway. Sorry, I moved on. And then what was the other one that we've got here? And
finally, yes, we had the Independent. Their headline was "Tottenham falter at Wembley once again." Not giving any credit to Burnley, just saying that Tottenham had faltered. But
tends to happen, doesn't it? Whenever they do these things, it always tends to be somebody else that's doing those. No, those are really interesting. Those, David. I mean, when you were looking through those old newspaper clips, is it easy? Does it like take you back to a time in space, or does it get diluted a little bit? Because you see so much stats, I do wonder whether you get desensitized to a lot of these.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, my intention was always to try and get as big a scrapbook I could possibly get, but like an online scrapbook. So rather than leafing through physical scrapbooks with the newspaper cuttings, try and get as many as possible. And as I say, I've already got more than 10,000 post-war scans from the Burnley Express. I'm up to, I think, about over 17,000. And I've not really scratched the surface. I've kind of... there's still a lot to go through. I'm kind of concentrating on particular seasons, promotion seasons, doing the more recent matches and kind of working my way back. So certainly post-war, I'm hoping, I don't know, maybe by the end of the year, I'll have a big proportion of those. I'll just basically get as much on as I can. If anyone's got any particular requests for matches that I don't have, then by all means, give me a shout and I'll try and get those on. But I am working my way through.
Was it when you first got the archive, when you first got access to it, like, did you go somewhere straight away? Because I would just go straight to Wembley in 2009 and I just look at all of those.
I think I was actually more interested in the 60s ones, obviously before my time, but the
I was just about to say, what when you were a lad watching them?
Thank you.
Sorry.
No. I think in terms of those matches, I'd seen the Burnley Express reports previously, but not really seen anything much from the Lancashire Telegraph. So being able to see those, because they used to have on the Saturday, I think they called it the Last Sports, and then it became the Sports Pink. They basically got it out on a Saturday evening, right up until probably about the mid 80s. And I do remember that in the sort of early 80s when the sports paper came out. And how they did it, I really don't know, because they basically got the match finished at whatever it would be, 10 to 5, whatever. The newspapers were printed and out to the newsagents by about 6, half 6. So how they got them printed out in that time was just incredible. Obviously, these days you've got the internet and it's all very different. But in those days, it's how people got the information from the sports newspapers on a Saturday evening.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for those sports fans, stat fans, we put on our YouTube page now. Those of you who are listening via podcast, you'll need to go and check that out. There is a link on there as to where you can find Dave's page, and you can have a look through there. And for the benefit of our podcast listeners, Dave, what is the link that they need to go to, please?
Yeah, I've got a helpful short link that takes you to the latest menu page that's been updated recently. There's a few other things on there, including headline highlights. You can go on and you can pick any game, and hopefully, I think I've got at least one headline from every match. I'm working my way through trying to get 2 and 3 for every match, and you can also click on buttons on there and get the actual scans. So on a match-by-match basis. The short link to use for the whole menu is bit.ly. And then it's / Burnley Stats QL, bit.ly Burnley Stats QL. And that gives you the menu page. There's loads of stuff on there, match database, match highlights, lots of information to look through.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. So that's what you can expect from the Friday night preview show going forward this season. Do please keep an eye out for those through your social media channels. I think the preview show is probably only going to be on YouTube this season rather than on the podcast, but we will confirm that separately. So if you are a podcast subscriber, you might want to head the way to our YouTube channel to get the preview show with Dave Statman Roberts. So you can hit subscribe there. Second part of this show, then, we're going to have a quick look at. We've got a couple of weeks before the transfer window closes, and there's been a lot of noise on social media this weekend, Tom, which has been rumbling for a few weeks now about we're now a club in multi-club ownership with our chairman and the board purchasing Espanyol. And there's been a little bit of grievance aired on social media by some fans today, seeing our chairman and JJ and our board over in Spain concentrating on Espanyol at the moment, when we've just got beat in our first Premier League season and still in need, in the views of some people, for more signings to come in. It's always a difficulty, this, isn't it? Because you want your chairman and you want your board to be fully focused on your own team and what you want to do. But I think I'm going to come to you first, Tom, just to get your reaction to the club purchasing Espanyol, and how do you feel about them being there at the moment and concentrating on that setup when we do have work to be done here at Burnley?
Yeah, I think at the minute, the optics of it aren't great because we've just got beat, as you say. We're looking a bit out of a depth in the Premier League at the minute, and then you're seeing videos of JJ Watt dancing around, drinking, hitting the same notes that he was hitting when he came over here and pace at the Espanyol game. I think they were both very pointedly posted photos of them at the Spurs game as well on Saturday, just to get across it. We're still here as well, guys. I think I've got reservations about the general takeover of Espanyol, in terms of, I don't really like the fact that there's so many multi-club ownerships in football now. I prefer we weren't one of them. And I think in our specific situation, if we're ever in a situation where we're out of the Premier League for a couple of years, our income then drops below Espanyol's and we become the junior partner, and I think that could have ramifications which wouldn't be good for us. But that's down the line. Looking at where we are now in terms of the transfer window, I'd say, I'm sure Pace has took a phone, something that can use the internet, something that can make calls, etc., to Spain with him. I'm sure if he's needed to sign off on anything, he'll be reachable. I'm sure they've got Matt Williams doing whatever he does. I mean, I don't know what the separation of powers is in terms of who deals with what aspects of transfers, but I'd be very surprised if Pace is doing it all. So I'm sure he can have a Sunday in Barcelona and things can still progress without him. I suppose it's a projection really of the worry that the links seem to have gone quiet. We don't seem to be being linked to any new players. We probably do still need at least 2 or 3, despite the fact that we've got such a massive squad. And I suppose that's why I say it's probably the optics of it more than anything else. Everyone on this end's worrying, and all we've seen on Sunday is Espanyol fans celebrating, having a great comeback win against Atletico Madrid, and it kind of makes you feel like that meme of where Squidward's looking out the window and SpongeBob and Patrick are all happy. But you know, in a week's time, if we bring in another striker, beat Sunderland, and Espanyol get beat 5-0 off whoever they're playing next week, it'll all feel very different, won't it? As I say, I'm not really too worried about it until it comes to the point down the line, if it should happen, where we become the junior partner in this, and then I'd be worried. But I'm not too fussed up in it.
So what's the reaction been from the trust side, George? Because obviously that's something that you've got access to from a lot of the trust members. Have any of your subscribers, have any of the trust members raised any other concerns that might be, or I guess what's your, as trust chairman, what's your view of the multi-club ownership structure?
I think something that we've not possibly raised yet, and that has always been, since we got taken over, always been probably the primary concern from trust members is, where's the money coming from, you know, and how much money do we have, and is there any long-term threats to Burnley Football Club? Because at the end of the day, a supporters trust is there to safeguard, you know, the future of the football club. And when, you know, AOK came in and leveraged the debt, etc., there's always been rumblings, and obviously always tried to get answers to, well, how sort of sustainable are we as a club? And for me, this is my worry, the Espanyol deal. I've absolutely no issue with JJ Watt and Alan Pace, etc., heading over to Espanyol after, you know, they were at Burnley on Saturday or at Tottenham and then headed to Espanyol for Sunday's game. No issue with that. You know, you own both teams, you know, have a right jolly. I'd be up there for an ease up as well. But for me, the issue in this situation is no two ways about it. You know, you're putting money into Espanyol, rightfully so if you own that football club. But this is such a pivotal moment in Burnley's history. You know, we really could do with trying to stay up this season. And when you're looking, you know, northeast to Sunderland, you're seeing that they spent 140 million this summer, and we were categorically a better team than them last season. And now, if you were to stack each squad up against one another, I think you'd find it difficult to say we're in a better position. And for me, that's a concern. It really is. So my biggest gripe with this is that there's money that's going to be flowing to Spain and going to be converted to euros, when I really think it should be spent in British pounds. In terms of the Clarets Trust, I mean, there's the next fan advisory board meeting next week, and I always try to, you know, send agenda items. And one of the questions we've put forward this time is, how does the acquisition of Espanyol benefit Burnley Football Club, and how does it play into the long-term plans of our club? And it would be interesting to get an answer to that, because I can certainly see the positives of a multi-club ownership, you know, getting to trade players between each club, benefiting from the shared contacts, you know, the just friendly relations between the clubs, being able to go and share information between how you do things, you know, whether it be expertise, personnel. There's definitely benefits to it. We see the likes of Brighton have done it fantastically well. But I think at this very moment in time now, my biggest concern, probably one of my few concerns with it, is the money. We need to spend money, and we need some signings, because this squad isn't good enough yet. And I'd love to see the Espanyol deal thrive in years to come. But right now, we need to make some signings.
Do you think, you mentioned before that you thought we were 30, 40 million pounds worth away of signings to make this squad competitive? I don't think we have that, do we? Can we afford that? We've already spent a load this summer.
I don't have the checkbook, sadly, and I don't have the accounts. One of the things that I'd maybe throw into the mix here is, how much is our revenue holding us back in terms of how much we can spend? You look at a team like Sunderland, the fact that they're packing out, now that they're in the Prem, probably 45,000 fans every week, every other week when they're playing at home. And you think a club of that size, their revenue is probably a lot bigger, or it can be a lot bigger than ours. And because of PSR and financial fair play, that's unfortunately dictating how much teams can spend these days. Tom mentioned it before. We've got so many players now who are just doing niche. They're doing nothing. They're not providing any benefit to us. And it's nothing against them personally, but your likes of Trezor, Cherlinov, Delquart, we've got so much fluff around the edges of our squad. And it mustn't be easy to get them off the books because teams don't want them. You know, we saw with Egan Riley last summer, nobody wanted to even touch him because, you know, he'd shown nothing. But we need to trim down the squad. We need to get them out the door somehow, recoup those wages. If you're selling a Trezor, maybe you can get 10 million for him, you know, and it's these sort of deals we can probably spend 20 million and use that then to reinvest. But I think it's a real priority now. As Tom said, the links have gone quiet, and even though some of our best business has come out of nowhere this summer, there was always rumblings that, you know, we were on the front foot and we were trying. Whereas right now it seems deadly quiet, and it feels like we're at our sort of maximum now. We're at the squad we're going to go into the season with, which for me is a real concern.
Yeah, it's a real talking point. And I'd be interested to hear what, you know, our listeners think about this, about what their concerns are and whether or not they're actually bothered about the Espanyol link at all. So good opportunity as this week's talking point to drop your comments in the video chat below. If you're listening to this via podcast, and drop us a line on social media and let us know what your thoughts are about that. Are you unduly concerned? Do you think that attention has maybe been distracted elsewhere? And where are we going to get the final signings from that we need to get to make this squad competitive? You know how to get in touch with us, listeners, and do hit that subscribe button while you're there. Good stuff. Well, listeners, that's all we've got time for this week. That has been the None and Never podcast, brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. I forgot who our sponsors were then. There was a brief minute then. I was going to get myself in all sorts of bother then. But thanks as ever go to George and to Tom, who have helped contribute to this week's episode. And to Statman Dave, please do keep tuned in to those previous shows as we go into the season, and those newspaper clippings. They do look very excited. We will be back with the previous show this coming Friday, looking ahead to the Sunderland game. We will have a special Sunderland fan as well to give us their views. Hopefully not quite as excitable as George has got them all, and Tom have got them all riled up to be. So hopefully he'll be nervous. That would be a good thing to do. Please turn on your subscriptions and turn on your notifications so you don't miss another episode. And we'll be back next week. Thanks to you, as ever, for downloading this episode. Your support is very much appreciated. We would not be here without you. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the None and Never podcast. Until next time. The None and Never podcast is brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonenever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners TalkSport. We are proud to be associated with the TalkSport Fan Network.